Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Voices for Change 2.0, the only podcast that focuses on mental health while mixing in movies, music, books, sports, and pop culture. Here are your hosts, Rebecca and Joe Lombardo.
Hey, good morning, and welcome to Voices for Change 2.0.
Yeah, thanks for joining us today on this wonderful August Saturday in the middle of August. Wow, I really just crashed and burned with that, didn't I?
Well, it's just hard to believe. It's the 17th. September is
right around the corner.
Right around the corner, and with that comes all the Halloween stuff.
Yeah, which is already out. I've been to our local Kroger, and the last couple of weeks already they've had like ceramic jack-o'-lanterns and stuff out in the front, and I'm getting excited for it for a lot of different reasons. It's my favorite season, first and foremost. I'm one of those yahoos that likes all the pumpkin spice flavored stuff.
Yeah, not me.
Yeah, not you.
Not
and
me.
It's going to be a little bit cooler in the air, which I like, and I don't like it blistering hot. And this year with us having our great niece around, we're excited to see her through her first Halloween. She just started crawling this week, so that's exciting and
exciting and terrifying at the
yeah.
same time.
Yeah. That happened, and we're like, okay, we got to start baby-proofing the house now.
Yeah, she's 8 months now, so
8.5 months.
8.5,
it's almost. She's going to be 9 months, not next week, but the following week.
Yeah, and so we're kind of excited because we've got, in the years past, we've spent all the holidays together, just by ourselves, which I'm not complaining about. It was, very stress-free and,
very relaxing.
Yeah, relaxed. We had Thanksgiving in our pajamas.
Yep.
But this year...
Go Boston Market.
This year we've got somebody else a couple of people to consider.
Yeah.
So we're excited for Christmas. She'll be a year at Christmas, so that's the big thing that's going on with us.
Yeah, we're starting to get geared up now, and now we finally understand all the early prep. Before Luna came along, it was it's end of July. Why are they starting with the Halloween stuff already?
Yeah.
And now and also the back to school stuff. And now we get it a little bit more. You have to have all this prep time for these holidays that are coming up. When you've got kids around. Partly to get them pumped up for it, and partly to get yourself pumped up for it too, I think.
I still maintain that kids go back to school too early. No. I remember when we would go back after Labor Day.
Yeah. And
kids are going back. They were going back this week, some of them.
I know.
And I would be so mad that, August is still summertime to me. And it's like June, July, August, you have those 3 off for summer regardless. And I'm just glad that
glad that we
don't have to deal with it.
We wouldn't have to deal with it, yeah. So, well, we will once Luna's in school, but that's a few years down the road.
Yeah, we've got a while for that yet. So.
Yeah.
But so let's talk a little bit about our guest for today. We've been rambling a little bit here. So Chrisa is someone that's very, very important to the mental health community, especially on Twitter. Pardon me. She is a driving force for change and for equality within those that are dealing with mental health issues. Last year, she also won a WEGO Health Award, which we'll ask her a little bit more about that. So she's a winner, and she is starting this new, I don't want to give too much away before she comes on, but it's a new project, and we're excited to talk with her about it because it sounds like it's really going to be a huge benefit to the mental health community. So please welcome to our show today, Chrisa Hickey.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's thanks for having me on. Unlike you, Joe, sorry, I up here in Northeast Wisconsin, I like it to be as warm as possible for as long as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. You know, you guys get a little bit colder a little bit sooner. We're just outside Detroit, so for us, yeah, we get the cold, but we seem to avoid some of the stuff that our friends west of us encounter.
Well, I gotta tell you, we watch football games, and we watch the Packers play.
Packers, woo!
It looks like it's just absolutely freezing, and
it is.
you know it might just be because we've got a stadium,
yeah,
so it doesn't look as bad
Dome
for us.
You have a dome.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
we do.
Yeah, we went to the last Packer game I went to was December 23rd, and it was negative 23 with the wind chill. It was pretty awesome.
Oh, God. Yeah, no, thank you. That's
I don't even know how to prepare for that.
I like cold weather, but that's a bit much. You know.
Welcome to the frozen tundra.
Yeah, really. I mean, it's funny whenever you watch a thing on football and they're talking about the Packers, they always bring up the frozen tundra, and it really is.
Yeah.
You know,
it really is.
And I don't know how you guys handle it. I really don't. You know, my day job, I'm yeah, I would imagine so. You know, my day job, I'm outside most of the time, so I couldn't imagine doing this job in weather that cold. I've done it in weather that cold.
Yeah.
I mean, we've gotten those temperatures around here.
Yeah, you've had it.
But yeah, it's just getting it as consistently as you guys do. It's just woof, you know.
We get used
All right,
to it.
so if you don't have any questions for us, we're just going to jump right in here.
Let's get it.
Okay.
All right. Yay.
So the first question that we ask probably 95% of our guests.
It's probably 100% now for as long as we've been doing this. We ask this of everybody.
Yes. Where does your mental health journey begin?
Well, my journey really began when my son Timothy was about 4 years old. Tim is, my husband and I have 3 children. Our oldest son is 29. He's our biological child. We have 2 other children we adopted from the foster care system. Tim, actually, we adopted knowing, we brought him in as a foster child knowing we would adopt him. So we got him when he was a day old. And
oh, wow.
by the time he was about 4 years old, we knew something wasn't quite right. We'd been to see doctors, pediatricians. He didn't talk very much. Our pediatrician said, well, his older brother's very verbal. That's not unusual. He seemed to get very agitated very easily. By the time he was 4 years old, we asked his pre-K teacher to tell us if she thought something was up, and she told us on the second day of school she thought something was up. And we took him to a neurologist, and they said, well, you know, we might say with the language issues and everything else, maybe it's an autism spectrum disorder, but he has excellent eye contact and a pretty decent sense of humor, and we're not exactly sure what it is. So by the time he was 5 years old, he was saddled with this ED-NOS diagnosis, which is an emotional disorder not otherwise specified. So, which is pretty common for kids to get this NOS diagnosis, not otherwise specified, which is, in my parlance, that's basically doctor speak for we have no idea what's going on. So
yeah.
Between the ages of 5 and 11, he went through the emotional disorder NOS to bipolar disorder NOS to bipolar disorder 1 to bipolar disorder with psychotic features until he was about 11 and a half, and he attempted suicide.
my
He had been
God.
in the care of a therapist for some time, and the therapist had told us our son was going to need to be hospitalized, but she wouldn't really put a label on why he needed to be hospitalized. And when he tried to kill himself to stop the voices in his head, the doctor said after his first inpatient stay, well, your child has childhood onset schizophrenia.
Wow.
So that was really the beginning, because the first thing I did was say, get out of town. Kids don't get schizophrenia. It's an adult disease. And went on the internet and tried to do some research, my husband and I, to figure out anything we could about childhood onset, and found nothing. So we really didn't know what to do. So we had everything from doctors, long-standing, well-known, older psychiatrists telling us we had to relinquish Tim to the state in order to get him the right treatment. We had others telling us he needed to be institutionalized. We would never be able to have a normal home. And eventually one day, I started seeing a therapist for the stress of dealing with it all when he was about 12 years old or 13 years old. And my therapist said, maybe you should start journaling this, because this is something, if you get it down on paper, maybe it will help you. Well, I spent all my time on the internet. I do digital marketing for a living, so I started a blog instead. And I thought I was just airing out my own feelings and what we were going through, till one day somebody commented back and said, me too. And that's when I realized that we weren't alone. There really are other parents out there with kids who have serious mental illness who didn't have anywhere else to turn. And that's when I really started to collaborate with these moms. And one of the moms, a couple of years into this, said, we're kind of like this weird club. These other parents like us, we're kind of this weird club. And we started taking in stories of other parents at that point. We called it Parents Like Us Club. And then one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you today is, in the beginning this year, I founded a 501c3 nonprofit called the Parents Like Us Club to help other families like ours trying to raise a child with a serious mental illness and doesn't know where else to turn, to the resources to go to for support and help.
That's awesome that you started that, and terrifying that you had doctors telling you that you had to relinquish your child to the state. That's I don't.
Incredibly common. Oh
my gosh, that's terrible.
Yeah. Well, in most states, the cost. It's the cost, right, of caring for a child like this. Timothy had to, you take a child at 11. Okay, he has a serious mental illness. He's just about on the threshold of puberty. It's almost impossible to get a child going through puberty stable, mostly because the minute you get their meds adjusted right, they grow and everything goes to hell. So Timothy ended up in residential treatment, and the only reason we could afford it is we lived in Illinois at the time, and the state of Illinois actually has a program for parents who have children with a psychosis, a psychotic disorder, to help them pay for residential treatment regardless of the parent's income. Which is great because, and this is the reason a lot of parents are told to relinquish their rights to the state. The state doesn't have to help you with, the $150,000 a year it takes to put a kid into residential treatment. Your insurance company often, even though there's parity, won't cover it. So the school districts, even though they're supposed to educate these children and can't unless they're in a very controlled environment, will oftentimes find a way to get out of having to help parents get a kid into a residential school. So relinquishing your kid to the state as a foster child, from a lot of parents, is the only way they can get treatment for their children.
I'll tell you that I can, excuse me, I'm sorry about that. I can relate to you in a very small way. I'll just tell you really quickly about my experience with that. I had an older brother who eventually started to hear voices and was struggling with a lot of different kind of scary things, really bad raging temper and things like that. And one night he tried to kill himself as well, and when they put him in, I was in 5th grade at the time. So there was no internet and no real way to research. And they took him away, and eventually they tried to tell us that he was schizophrenic. So there's my mom trying to find anything and everything she can to find out what the heck happened to him, and we're having a really hard time, struggling, trying to find, some type of camaraderie and in some way of researching what she was learning. Eventually, they started saying that it was more of a closed head injury than schizophrenia. But I don't think that there was ever an actual diagnosis that was correct for him. I think he was always misdiagnosed. And I say was now because he passed away a couple of years ago. He stopped taking care of himself, stopped taking his meds, and essentially he passed away from drug and alcohol abuse.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thank you. So to a degree, I can understand. I was a kid when it happened, but I remember it very well.
Well, the sibling component is a huge component too in these families. I mean, especially, we all talk about, mental illness really is a family disease. It affects everyone in the family. It's even more so when it's a child, because you've got siblings. Timothy's my middle of 3 children, and when he was really, really unstable in his teenage years, our oldest, who's 3.5 years older than Tim, was in high school. He was 12, 13, Tim was 11, 12, 13, was really unstable, and, our oldest, Alex, was in high school. I never got to see him in the marching band. I never got to see him run track. I never made it to a parent-teacher conference. We couldn't leave Tim alone for 1 second. My husband and I literally spent every waking minute with Tim, one or both of us, for 4 years, because you could never leave him alone even for a second. We didn't know whether he would hurt himself or somebody else. And when he finally did go into residential treatment, our daughter collapsed. I mean, she's a year younger than Tim. She was diagnosed with PTSD, just from the stress of having to live with a sibling like Tim. So, when we talk about it being a family disease, it's so hard on everyone in the family. And it took a lot for us after Tim finally got stable. By the time he was about 19 and a half, he came out of residential treatment. He was very stable, but it took good portion of into his early 20s before his siblings actually could be around him and not flinch.
Yeah, I understand that 100%.
Yeah. Tim's doing okay now?
He's doing great. He just turned 25 a couple weeks ago, and he is living in his own apartment right now, about a mile away from us. He holds down a small part-time job in a sheltered work program, kind of through a family friend, and he's pretty happy. He's doing really well. He's been very stable. He likes to tell me every March is kind of his anniversary of his first worst hospitalization. So every March he'll say to me, it's been X number of years, and this coming up this past March was 4 years since he's been in the hospital. So he's pretty proud of that.
That's wonderful.
That's great. We're real happy to hear that he's
definitely
thriving like that. So, yay.
Yeah, it's great.
So let's move on to the next question we've got for you. It's a little bit dated because it took place last year, but you did win a WEGO Health Award last year, and I think you might be up for another one this year, aren't you?
I don't know. Well, the finalists are going to be coming out soon, so we'll see. But I typically am, and I think again this year I won the award last year for advocating for another. Because my advocacy work is. Yeah, so my award was for advocating for another, which is a great category because a lot of us do advocate for a loved one or a friend or a relative, and it's in my case, Tim didn't have the wherewithal to advocate for himself. He was a child, and like I said, I needed to advocate for him and for our family, what was best for all of us, and I continued that work as my advocacy changed from sharing our story to helping others through their story, and now with the nonprofit, hoping to help even more families through their journey through mental illness with a child. I'm not the one who, although I am, by the way, I am diagnosed with major depression and generalized anxiety disorder, but even though I'm not advocating for myself, particularly for mental illness, I'm advocating for families. That's what the award was for, and I believe I was nominated for the same one this year, but we'll see. they're coming up. Like I said, the finalists should be coming out in a couple weeks. So.
Yeah, I'm excited. I am up for a couple myself this year, so
I
am.
It's great.
Very excited. Thank you. So we'll see what happens. But so since then, you've been really busy. Give us a little more information about Parents Like Us Club. What are your goals, and what kind of message do you hope to spread?
Sure. So we really are in the infancy this year of getting the website up and going, getting the board put together, and really getting going. But we've set up the Parents Like Us Club to have three main goals for the community of families raising children with serious mental illness. So the first thing we want to do is give a voice to families raising these children. There's not enough stories out there about these families and what they go through every single day. And we want to be able to give a platform for parents to be able to tell their story however they want to. If they want to do it visually through video or photo, if they want to do a blog post, if they want to do an audio recording, if they want to be anonymous or they want to share who they are, we want to be able to give them that voice to share their story, because we know that the more we share our story, first, other parents don't feel alone, other families don't feel alone. The public starts to hear more and more about these kids, and the fact that, right now, especially with everything that's happened with the recent, mass shootings, we want people to hear stories about real people with real mental illness, not what some politician says is mental illness. And we really wanted the medical community to be able to hear from these families, because a big issue with families raising kids with serious mental illness is, believe it or not, the medical community and doctors and clinicians who don't want to, quote unquote, label these children for life. When really what we need to do is not worry about the label, but worry about how we're treating these kids and what these kids and their families are going through. So that's the first thing. The second is we want to be able to provide resources and information for parents so no one has to try and figure out what we had to figure out all on our own. So there's a huge maze of dealing with the school system, dealing with the medical community, dealing with the juvenile justice system, dealing with social services. I can't tell you, I don't know a single parent who has a child with a serious mental illness who has not been reported to Child Protective Services for one reason or another. So how do they go about navigating those systems? Where can they get information about how to deal with what happens when your kid's hospitalized, or what to do when Child Protective Services calls? We want to give them that education so they have somewhere to go and find it. And then the third thing is we want to provide microloans, and this is an inevitable. We're probably not going to be doing it in 2019, but we want to start next year in 2020, give microloans to parents so they can have an in-person advocate with them to attend a school meeting with special education, or attend a doctor's appointment, or attend a meeting with social services or the juvenile justice system, because a lot of times it helps to have that professional advocate who is a neutral third party be there to help them navigate through those systems. I used to do this in our own school district when my kids were still in school. To the point where the special education director really, when she saw me coming, she's like, well, somebody who knows all the rules is here. I mean, we would literally go and sit down with parents, because it's very emotional when you go and sit and try and advocate for your own child. And no one, you have to be an expert in, think about these parents. We have to be experts in education, experts in medicine, experts in legal, experts in, governmental policy. It's impossible to be an expert in everything. So if we can give you a small loan of $250 or $500 to pay for an advocate to go to that meeting with you, it can make all the difference in that family's lives.
Wow.
Definitely. That's amazing.
It's awesome. You don't hear about like what you went through with Tim. You don't hear this side of it. A lot of the people that we talk to on this show, a lot of the advocates, they'll acknowledge that they might have felt whatever symptoms for whatever they're dealing with, in their teens or what have you. But to have
right.
Childhood onset schizophrenia, for example, or any other thing that's hitting these kids and subsequently
childhood onset bipolar,
the families.
And, yes, even severe depression.
Right. Yeah, it's something that they're even with us in the mental health community, you don't hear as much about. And the fact that you guys are number one, drawing attention to it, and number two, being a resource. You're absolutely filling this niche that needs to be filled. Nothing but total respect for what you're doing out there. It's so necessary.
Thanks. It really is, and like you said, I think, a lot of people, like you said, who are diagnosed when they look back, they can see that their symptoms started well before they were an adult, and
right.
I think for a lot of people, we always, especially people with schizophrenia, I've got adult friends who were diagnosed as adults, but really have told me, yeah, my symptoms started. I know I could look back and see the symptoms started when I was 12 or 13. If we can bring awareness to this, and again, it's kind of that showing these real people who have these are real kids who have real stories. I mean, I can't tell you how often Tim and I go to an event and people can't believe Tim has schizophrenia, because what you end up thinking about is, what was the last mass shooting? What was the last horror story or horror movie you saw? What was the last, someone with a straitjacket and the wild hair? That's the image people have in the public about schizophrenia. So when you say there's a kid with it, you end up having, we joke a lot that the families with these kids is that we say this is the no casserole disease, right? So if your kid has cancer or your kid has breaks a leg, everyone comes over and they bring you dinner and they take your other kids to soccer practice. When Tim was diagnosed with schizophrenia, people evaporated. And it's not because they're afraid. Part of it's fear, a little bit of it, but part of it is they just don't know what to do because they don't understand it.
Yeah.
So if we can find a way to help them understand it better, that can only help society as a whole, I would think.
Yeah, people tend to fear what they don't understand, and
right.
That's been part of our focus with this show, is to bring some understanding to things, and I think that's so important that we have you on the show, just to bring a focus to something up to this point that hasn't had focus.
Yeah, I'm not even certain.
I appreciate it very much, because, as you can tell for me, Tim's an adult now, but it doesn't stop. I mean, just because we were successful and Tim has managed to grow up, it's still every day. It is schizophrenia, right? Every day for us is still, we get through every day, day to day. And just because he is technically an adult, one of the things that often comes, not always, but often comes with early onset schizophrenia is diminished mental capacity. So Tim lost a lot of his executive functioning skills and almost 40 IQ points from the time he was a child, as from having schizophrenia for so long that was so unstable. So it's kind of like, I have this, 6 foot 1 inch, 185 pound 12-year-old, for the rest of my life. But if we can get these kids diagnosed earlier, we can get them into treatment earlier. Parents aren't afraid of what it means if their child has a mental illness. We don't have to, these kids can succeed and become really productive members and happy members of society.
Yeah. Well, that, and, number two, and this is true with any mom, but, your child might be an adult now, but you're still a mom the rest of your life. So,
yep, absolutely.
You're going to be there for your baby no matter what, and that,
I sure am.
So that's something that's kind of hitting home for Beck and I now, with having Luna in the house,
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. Yeah, it's an adjustment for sure.
I'm sure.
Well, we've got to take our first break here, so we'll have you hang on a minute, and we'll see you on the other side of Blake MacGyver. It Gets Better.
Child without a friend. I see a soul who thinks that it's the end. A broken will's the hardest thing to mend. But try to understand. I know you're hurting. I can see your pain. But you've got a future where there's no more shame. Bright told you that you're weak and they are strong. They put that loaded metal in your head, but I can help you understand, yeah. I know you're hurting, I can feel your pain, but you've got a future where there's no more shame. You're a miracle in spite of what they say, and you'll see a brighter day, 'cause it gets better. It gets better. It gets better. 'Cause you'll find some home, you are not alone. The days just time will be better than fine. Love is right there, just let go of your cares. I know that you are almost there. Seize that bright new day. Cry with me and say, I once was hurting, consumed with pain, but now it's the future and there's no more shame. You're a miracle in spite of what they say, and today's that brighter day, and it gets better. It gets better. It gets
Hey, welcome back to Voices for Change 2.0. I'm Joe. She's Rebecca.
Hello.
Isn't she cute, guys? She's just adorable. And we have on the line the wonderful, lovely, and talented Miss Chrisa Hickey.
Hello.
Hi. So
Have you start writing all my PR?
I'm okay. I'm cheap. So yeah, we've been having some good conversations about a lot of important stuff, and we're gonna keep doing that because it's working so far. So I'm good with that.
Yeah. Seems to be.
Yeah. Okay. So, Chrisa.
Yeah.
Next question. Do you think it's important to start giving mental health sensitivity courses in schools?
I think it's important for kids to have sensitivity to all kinds of other kids that are different. I don't think, this may be a weird one, but I think kids should be I don't think we should segregate mental illness from other kinds of different needs that other kids have. Meaning, we know that kids should be sensitive to kids that have mobility issues and kids that have hearing or sight issues or learning disabilities. I'm kind of an advocate to say, why do we segregate mental illness from those kinds of things? Shouldn't we say kids who have, anxiety issues, or kids that have, issues with, a lot of times in school it looks like temper issues, right, or ability to concentrate issues, if they're bipolar or something, or someone like Tim who, Tim was like the king of leaving school grounds and kind of wandering around the neighborhood, which is not a good one because that's how he dealt with the anxiety of trying to deal with school and the rigors of school and the voices in his head and everything else. I mean, I kind of think that when we teach kids to be tolerant of others' differences, I would like to see mental illness lumped in there with all the others, because I think the disservice we do to people with mental illness is we separate it from illness. And, there's a big push right now to take illnesses like schizophrenia in particular and also bipolar disorder and reclassify them as neurobiological disorders, because a big reason for that is because these are not, we're always told, this is just it's a mood disorder. I really hate the behavioral health phrase. This isn't a behavioral issue. This is something wrong biologically with the brain
Right.
and the way it transmits information to the body. So I would rather us teach kids to be tolerant of anyone who's different, no matter what their diagnosis is.
I like that answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good answer. And it's you make a valid point with the segregation thing. Especially with the talking in the news lately. With the shootings and it being blamed on mental illness and whatnot. And I'm so sick and tired of seeing that being scapegoated. For this as opposed to
hate's not a mental illness. Yeah.
No, hate's taught. It's absolutely taught. So, yeah, the fact that an awareness should be brought on mental health and different mental illnesses, for children. But I agree, we shouldn't segregate it. There should be the same type of sensitivity that you would have for a child that's in a wheelchair, or a child that's deaf, or a child that's blind, or and I think maybe part of the reason it does get segregated is because it's not something that you can readily see necessarily, until you see how the child is behaving.
Plus, it's such a large category too. It covers so much. There's just so much out there that falls into that realm. I think that maybe people take it aside from others because it's just so big, and it would be, at least in my opinion, it would be hard to teach it if it was even bigger than it is now.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just kind of my perspective on it.
Yeah, but we've got autism. One of the things that we look at, when your parents trying to get more exposure to talk about kids with mental illness is the autism community. Because they've done a really great job over the past 35, 40 years or so, really getting awareness of autism and changing the dialogue around it. Autism Speaks was big, was big to do that. They're mostly a research body right now these days, but they did a really good job of kids thinking, kids with autism now are thought of as, this kid has autism. It's kind of like a, it's not really a learning disability, but it's a different way this kid processes the world. And when you deal with mental illness, it's how can we shape the conversation so you see it the same way? Because autism is a pretty broad spectrum disorder as well.
Right.
And how can we shape the conversation so that we can get that kind of understanding from the public and from educators and school administrators and the law enforcement, frankly. You see a lot of kids right now, you have a meltdown in school, and, kids with mental disorders in elementary school are getting arrested.
Mm-hmm.
So, whereas thank God they weren't doing that in the old days. Timothy at one point was so frustrated in a special education class with the teacher, he picked up a desk over his head and would throw it at the teacher. If Tim could have easily been arrested in the second or the third grade. And it's not. We keep focusing on, and I think that's it's a larger societal problem, and we could go into that forever. But instead of focusing on the problem, like the behavior, how can we focus on what's manifesting the behavior? And I think that's what the autism community has done a good job of showing. And we need to figure out how to do that as well when we advocate for our kids with mental illness.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah. What strides do you think we've taken towards battling stigma, if any?
Well, I'm a firm believer that sunlight sanitizes. So I think that, one of the things, and I took a lot of heat for this originally, I didn't start my blog until Tim was about 15 years old.
Okay.
And when I started it, he was a part of it. And we had a conversation about whether or not we wanted to use our real names. Because, again, you worry about the stigma or labeling a child for life like a lot of, doctors don't want to do. And we decided as a family, all of us, that we wanted our names to be out there. Because I think when you can put an actual name and a face with something, you take away the monster, that you think it is in your head. So Tim's always been very open and very happy to talk to to be interviewed on the blog or do a video for the blog or talk in front of a group of, a NAMI group, which he's done, or we've trained social workers on how to recognize the signs of mental illness in kids in foster care. And he's been very open at wanting to do that and very fine with me using his name and my real name and my husband Tom's real name on the blog. Our other two kids, not so much. They would prefer we didn't always use their name. My daughter, we call her the girl. If you read my blog, it says the girl. But she's fine with her picture up there, believe it or not. So there's a couple of pictures of her there. And our oldest, Alex, who's an adult now, he's totally fine with it. But when he was a teenager, he was a little sensitive, as you can imagine. So
yeah,
I really think that what we really need to do is get more people willing to say, this is me and this is my story and this is my family and this is our story. Because the more we expose people to real people, I think the more we remove the fear that the ignorance causes.
Yeah, the fear of the quote unquote other.
Yeah, or the unknown, right?
And that's exactly. And that's a symptom that we really do deal with these days. Is I tend to get fairly political about things outside of this show, much to my wife's chagrin. And one of the things I'll always get up in arms about is when they start talking about cutting Social Security or cutting Medicare or different social programs. And I'll do the one thing that my friends that are supporters of the group that wants to do that, I'll always throw it into their, I don't want to say throw it into their face, but I'll be like, all right, well, here's the thing is if Social Security gets cut, that affects my mother. That affects my wife. If Medicare gets cut, that affects my mother. I always put a face on it to say, okay, when you're affecting this program or this certain situation, put a real life face to it. And how does it impact this person? Because it's easy enough to point a finger at a group of people and say, well, they did this or they don't do that. But when you've actually got personal experience in it, then, it's a lot harder to point that finger.
Yeah. Here's a good response for your friends, and this is what I tell mine that are, slightly more conservative than I am. My husband says I'm a little left of, Che Guevara, so I'm a little leftist, but
Yay.
Everybody gets upset about the homeless situation in the city. So take a city like Chicago, which is probably the biggest city, close to us, right? More than 60% of the homeless people on the streets have a serious mental illness. More than 75% of adults with serious mental illness get their health care through Medicaid. So you do the math. I mean, you can't cut one and expect the other one to clear up. If you take away, more than 75%, it's depending on where you're getting your numbers from, it's 76%, it's 79%, whatever, that of adults with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder rely on Medicaid for their health insurance. If they don't have it, there'll be more homeless people on the street standing on the street corner screaming at the rain. So you can't have it both ways. You have to decide what's more important for society. Is it more important to have more people that are stable and happy and not living in the streets, or is it more important for you to save $5 a paycheck?
Exactly. The big conversation right now is Medicare for all. That's something that a lot of the Democratic candidates are talking about. It's a talking point. And, the argument I always hear is, my taxes are going to go up. And, I'll say this really quick and jump off the political thing because I know it's the look I'm getting from Beck is not a happy one. But if taking a little bit of extra money out of my paycheck helps to pay for your kid's surgery, I don't have a problem with that because I have a heart. I'm more than happy to contribute to whatever's going to be positive for another person's outcome with their health, physical or mental.
Yeah. Not to mention, and my last thing, and then I'll stop. The more you widen the more you widen the pool, the more you lower the risk. So actually, the cost goes down for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're off.
Yeah. Okay, we're done, honey.
Okay, thank you.
Chrisa, you and I can talk about that stuff later.
What would be the first thing that you would tell a parent with a child who is recently diagnosed?
Is anybody there? Chrisa and or Scott? Can either of you guys hear us? No, it's still connected. We still have our internet connection, so it's not that.
Well, we have, it looks like we have lost our guest.
Yeah, we have some technical difficulties going on over here, guys, and we do apologize for that. We don't know what happened, and it really sucks because we were having a great conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
About all these things. We're talking back and forth with our producer Scott. Weird. Okay.
Okay, Chrisa, if you hear us, hang up and give us a call back if you could, please.
Yes.
We are unable to hear anything from your end, so
yeah.
Give us a call back if you can, please.
Yes. And in the meantime, we will ramble.
Or Scott could play us a song, maybe?
Possibly. Scott?
Scott?
Can you do that? A song would be lovely, just to get us by. A little something. Oh, she's back.
She's back.
Yay. Chrisa, are you there? And she's gone.
Oh.
Aw. This is the Hey!
Oh, all right.
Yay!
There we go.
There you are.
Yeah,
we got you.
I was talking to you, and I said I couldn't hear you, so I figured I hung up and dialed back in.
Oh, thank God. Yeah,
no idea what
sure
happened
did.
there.
Yeah, we don't. It's technology.
Absolutely.
This is live show.
So great.
People.
Sorry about that.
Now you see the downside of doing a live TV or live
of a
podcast,
live show.
rather.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I waited till I could try and hear you again, but then when I didn't, I hung up. So here I am.
Well, thank you. You did the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry about that. So.
No worries.
All right. So the last question that we left off on, and I don't know if anybody else heard it, but I know we didn't, was what would be the first thing you would tell a parent with a child that was recently diagnosed?
Oh. The first thing I would tell them is it's not their fault. It's amazing how many parents blame themselves for a child having a serious mental illness. Genetics may or may not be a part of it. We know that, traumatic issues may or may not trigger a mental illness in a child, but it's not something you can. It's not something you cause because you're a bad parent. It's something that happened to your kid. It's a neurobiological disorder, and your child is going to have it whether you. I mean, look at my kid, right? There could be a biological connection. There could not be. He started showing symptoms before he was in preschool. So you can't blame yourself for it. And for a lot of parents, the first thing they do is blame themselves. And when they can't get their child stable on their own, they consider themselves a failure when their kid has to go into the hospital, which I totally get, because the first time we put Tim in the hospital, Tom and I sat up all night talking about what incredible failures we were as parents. But, I hate to say this because, it's a cliche, but it's true. It's like you would never blame yourself for a child getting cancer. You would never blame yourself for your child having type 1 diabetes. Your child has a biological illness, and you are, by putting them in the hospital, you're getting them the very best care they can get. You would never not want to get your kid chemo because you couldn't cure their cancer on their own. You are doing the very best for your child that you can. So first thing you need to do is stop blaming yourself, because all it does is make you feel bad and doesn't help the situation.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's very good advice.
It is. Let's see here. We're getting down to the wire, but we've got a couple more questions, and that's, let's see.
Sure.
Well, we're going to go over our time just a tiny bit, probably about 5 minutes, so that we can get a couple more questions in. But those of you that are on the line waiting for Astro Kiki radio replay, that will be starting 5 minutes late. We'll mention that again once we wrap up, but that will be, like I said, we're going over about 5 minutes, so the next replay will be running a little bit 5 minutes late.
Little delayed.
Yeah.
So, because we do things live.
Yes.
So, okay. So, our question for you, Chrisa, is what kinds of self-care do you practice so that you don't get too overwhelmed with everything you're doing?
Well, like most people, I'm better at it some days than others. I do. I try and make time for the things that make me happy. My family, we moved from the Chicago area up here to Northeast Wisconsin a couple of years ago for a couple of reasons. First, the small town we live in is where my husband grew up, so we have a lot of support here, friends and family, which is good. It's also because it's a very small, insulated community. It's a great environment for Tim. Everybody knows whose kid he is, and it's very, very, very difficult for him to get in trouble no matter what he does or what happens. So if he's having a bad day out in public, most likely, and it has happened, we had about a year and a half ago, Tim decided that his meds were giving him heartburn and he was going to go off them. And I got 3 phone calls in one day going, I saw Tim today and he seemed a little off. Is he all right? And, I wouldn't get that in Chicago, but I get that here. Which is great. So because we have that, I have the ability to take some time to not focus on him 24/7 and do some things I like. So I have my own little office. My husband built me my own sanctuary where not only I work, but I can do some crafty stuff, which I like to do. Once in a while, I'll take a couple hours and lock myself up here with some great music and just create. My family thinks I'm weird, but Tim and I raise chickens together. We have 18 chickens, and it's fun. I think it's a great pastime. It gives us something to do together as a way to do things together without me having to be the parent and him being the kid. So we're partners in raising the chickens. And I do make eggs. Time. Yeah, lots of free. Oh God, you want free eggs? I got lots of free eggs. And I do make time to have some adult time with not only my husband but with my girlfriends as well. I think it's important that we remember that even though we're parents, we're still people, and we need to, if we can, make some time to have adult conversations with other adults, which for me it's fun. I get together with my girlfriends at least once every other week just to make sure we all touch base.
That's good.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, you have to have that interaction on some level, or you tend to go a little cuckoo.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very, it is very isolating. So it's good to make time to get out and interact with others. Yeah,
absolutely. I not sure how familiar you are with me and what I do, but I play music and I have for over 30 years. And my last band split up back in 2011, and since then I'd been teaching, and I just got in a new band earlier this year, and I didn't realize over that time span between 2011 and 2019 how much of an impact it had on me and how much I missed it. And it's good just having that camaraderie, getting together with some friends and playing some tunes and getting some stress out,
yeah, I'm sure.
So yeah, having people in your life that you can just hang out and, at times be stupid with, that it's beneficial. It really is.
So what comes next for you? What's on the agenda?
Oh boy. Well, trying to get the Parents Like Us Club off the ground, really, like I said, kind of finalizing our board of directors and getting our fundraising going so we can start giving some micro grants out next year. That's really the next thing as far as the advocacy front goes. Hoping to, I've done a lot of work with Janssen Pharmaceutical. I've done some videos with them and some education as far as schizophrenia and what it's like being a caregiver for schizophrenia. So I hopefully will continue doing some of that work. And for my family, we are just kind of going with the flow. Our oldest son is hopefully, it sounds like he's going to be going into the academy to become a state trooper here pretty soon. So I'm a little nervous about that. So it's kind of, I have to learn to come to grips with being the mother of a law enforcement officer. So
yeah.
But in state of Wisconsin, hopefully, it's not, it's a little, I wouldn't say safer because we have a lot of roadway here, but, it's something I'm going to have to come to terms with. And then my husband's was very sick over the winter. He had a liver transplant, so he's been recovering well. So the next thing for us is to get back on our feet and hopefully take a trip somewhere that does not involve a hospital. So hopefully that's what's next.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we want to do that, and like I said, I really want to get around to, I'd like to, in some of my travels coming up soon, I've met a lot of moms and dads, other parents over the past decade or so, really doing this advocacy work, and a lot of them I've met only online, and I've had the fabulous opportunity to meet several of them and become good friends with them in real life, but I would like to do some traveling and meet some of the others who have been very helpful and supportive to me, but I haven't had the opportunity to actually, shake their hand or give them a hug. So I'd like to do some of that.
That would be nice.
Yeah, that's a good goal to have. So, and finally, our last question: where can people find you on social media? If they want to reach out, they want to connect.
Best question.
Yep. Different things
well,
like
if
that.
they'd like to come, especially if they'd like to come and share a story with us, we are just launching the website this week. It's www.parentslikeus.club. That's the home for the new nonprofit. I have my blog as well. My personal blog is www.themindstorm.net. And they can always find me on Twitter at Chrisa_Hickey or on Facebook at Facebook/themindstorm.
All
Great.
right, very whipped that right out.
Yeah, really.
Yep, I've said that a few times. Yeah, that's so basically
Yeah.
if you Google the Mindstorm and me or Parents Like Us, you can probably find us.
Okay.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Again, Chrisa, thank you for all you're doing. Especially with Parents Like Us. That's just, it's such a great endeavor, and I personally, I wish you guys a lot of success with it. I hope it really takes off because I think it's a worthwhile thing you guys are doing with it.
Absolutely. Maybe a year from now we can have you back on and talk a little bit more about fundraising so that you can get those microloans going.
Mm-hmm.
But we'd love to have you back on.
Yeah, absolutely.
That sounds great.
When something really big is going on with it, definitely reach out. Let us know.
I definitely will. I appreciate the offer. That's great. Thanks so much.
Having people back.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on. Hang on for just a minute here. We're going to wrap up the show with Carly Robin Green, What Love is All About.
Have a great weekend, guys, and stay tuned for Astro PT Radio.
I've heard 10,000 love songs on the radio, played a famous love scene in my head, imagining someone beside me to hold, easing the cold emptiness, 'cause I was painting without color, dancing solo to no beat, till we kissed that night. I came alive. Well, you could be the one I've waited for to finally show me what love's all about. That mystery I've lived without. You give me a rush that I've never felt. Show me what love is all about. The midnights and mornings I've shared in the past left me wanting something so much more. Now, looking in your eyes, my heart beats so fast. I know you've been worth waiting for. 'Cause something happens when you touch me, when you're whispering my name. Every breath I take, dreaming and awake, I think you are the one I've waited for to finally show me what love's all about. That mystery I've lived without. You give me a rush that I've never felt. Baby, I'm ready now, so it's time I find out just what love is all about. Caught me by surprise, but I can't run away. No more lonely Sundays, 'cause now I see so vividly that baby you're the one I've waited for to finally show me what love's all about. That feeling I can't live without. You give me a rush that I've never ever felt. Oh, baby, I'm ready now, so it's time I find out just what love is all. Show me what love knows. Show me, baby. I live without. You give me a rush that I never felt. No, baby, I'm ready now, so it's time I find out just what love is all about.
Join us next week as Rebecca and Joe continue to battle the stigma of mental illness. Follow us on Twitter at Voices for Change RJ and on Facebook at Voices for Change 2.0.